Today's episode is brought to you by the Butler County 4-H and FFA Junior Livestock Auction, happening at the Butler Farm Show on Thursday, August 7th, starting at 5:30 p.m. When Sue Tidwell agreed to join her husband on a hunting trip to the wilds of Tanzania, she wasn't expecting it to change her life or her beliefs. She wasn't a hunter. In fact, she had serious doubts about going at all. What she found, though, wasn't the one-dimensional story we often hear in headlines or social media debates. Instead, it was a complex, deeply human portrait of wildlife, community, survival, and yes, hunting, told through the voices of Tanzanians themselves. In today's episode, part one of this two-part series, we dive into Sue's journey through grief, identity, and awakening. We talk about the people who shaped her experience, including two guides who shared the same name as her late brother, and a powerful female government-assigned game scout named Lillian who shattered assumptions along the way. This is not a story about killing. It's a story about listening, witnessing, and asking ourselves hard questions about what we think we know. This is Cries of the Savanna with Sue Tidwell. I very much so have the perspective of it's going to work out. If something goes wrong, we just figure out how to fix it or do the best that you can, right? For now. So thank you for coming in and meeting with me.
Well, thank you, Laura, for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here. Tammy and I have been talking about this for months, and she's like, I was like, remember, Sue's coming on Thursday. She's like, I'll be down. So
awesome.
Yeah, it's just a real honor. So Sue Tidwell Coyle is your maiden name. Most people around here
know me as Susie Coyle.
Susie Coyle, from Fenelton originally. She's the author of Cries of the Savanna, a compelling and candid adventure memoir that documents her eye-opening journey through the wilds of Tanzania and through her own beliefs about wildlife hunting and conservation. So this book isn't just about Africa or hunting. It's about shifting perspectives in the gray areas and conversations around conservation. What initially sparked your desire to travel to Tanzania and write this story?
Well, Tarzan first sparked those things.
Yes.
I was a complete Tarzan fan when my brothers didn't come home and turn the channel to the Steeler football game or something. But so I had a love of Africa and always wanted to go. And it's just one of those things that you put on the back burner, and then I ended up marrying my husband and moving to Montana, and he hunts deer and elk and all that, and he had always wanted to travel to Africa. So anyway, we that's kind of how we ended up there.
And you were hunters. I mean, your husband was a hunter, and he also had a military background. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it did come from that, but also you had a desire to understand and to...
Well, I grew up in a hunting family. My dad and my brothers all hunted. I grew up eating deer meat. I probably never had anything other than deer burger in my spaghetti till I was out of the house.
Same.
And, and I saw the deers hanging up in our garage and the processing, and I was always sad, but I understood what it meant. But I was never with them on a hunt. That was the boys' thing. And I was happy that was the boys' thing, and I had peace in the house, because my sister was a lot younger. And anyway, but when I married Rick, he wanted me to go with him on these hunts, and I loved being in the wild. I was really into hiking, and so for the first time I was going along on hunts just because I wanted to be in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. And so I learned so much more about it from a whole different perspective. I learned the work involved and the dedication and how many months it takes of scouting and all the pre-work that goes into hunting. So, and of course we ate all the meat he harvested too, but it didn't come. I wasn't skeptical about hunting till we were going to Tanzania, because like all Americans, or not all Americans, like many Americans, we tend to put certain animals on a pedestal. So it's okay to hunt this one, but it's not okay to hunt that one. Well, that was me. I put African wildlife on a pedestal. Like, why would he want to hunt a zebra? Why would anyone want to hunt a leopard or a lion?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That kind of thing.
Well, that's exactly my next part is, your thoughts on hunting, especially trophy hunting. What were they before your trip? And then how that perspective changed over the course of your trip. And listening to your audiobook, it started to shift pretty early. And I think a lot of that had to do with your, what would you refer to, like the game crew that you were with? There were many different experts that you were with, but what was there, like the outfitters or
the professional hunter.
Yes.
Then we also had a game scout, which we were lucky to have Lillian, who is a female game scout, which was really abnormal. We were just blessed to have her, and she spoke pretty good English. She's not affiliated with the hunting party at all. She is there to oversee and document the hunt and make sure everything's done legally. Well, her and I just hit it off because she met everybody the same day I did. There's 21 Tanzanians taking care of 4 of us.
Wow.
So yeah, kind of crazy until I thought, oh my gosh, they must think we're really spoiled Americans. Well, we were when you see what all it took to take care of us in that rugged, dry, land that had very little water. So, but anyway, yeah, Lillian and I hit it off, and she just taught me so much, and she's not affiliated with the hunting party, so that opened my eyes in different ways, and I just, stuff I had never even thought about came up.
And you did speak to the people that were in those positions and how hard they have worked throughout their life to get to that place, and that it was nice that they were, not only were they Tanzanians or they were Afrikanis, and I don't know if that's the term. I've heard that term before, if that's correct. Or
well, Afrikaans that's more South Africa.
Okay, that's
so they
right.
were Tanzanians, native Tanzanians. And they grew up. They didn't just they weren't handed these things on a silver platter.
Mm-hmm.
Even the outfitter who owned the outfitter, he had started as a tent attendant, worked up to tracker, worked up to PH, then on to be an outfitter. Same with our professional hunter. He started as I don't know if he was a tent attendant, but I know he was a tracker and then earned his PH. They paid their dues to work their way up to the position they were in. Yes. And they know the wildlife. They grow up with it, Well,
I think that to me, that came through a lot of what you were saying. It's just how knowledgeable they were.
Yes.
They would recognize things that were almost right in front of you, but you didn't. I mean, and how would you know to see something that you weren't looking for? Well, they just knew.
It's just no, they can see things. It's kind of like here you're driving by and a hunter can spot a deer in the field wherever where nobody else will see it. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing over there. Our trackers could spot an ear of a kudu at 400, 500 yards behind a bunch of brush. Mm-hmm. You'd just see that little piece sticking out and say, oh, there's a kudu there. Mm-hmm. I mean, just crazy stuff, My husband used to say, the trackers can hear an ant peeing on cotton and spot a toothpick in a bale of hay.
That's funny. That's funny. True, though. I mean, they're pretty remarkable.
They are remarkable.
So many readers may expect this to be a pro hunting book, but it's much more nuanced, right? Was it difficult to balance your personal feelings with what you were observing and ultimately the perspective you came away with?
Well, it was, I don't know what to say. I just wrote from my heart. And I don't know that a writer's supposed to do that, but this is my first book. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of wrote what I was feeling and what I was experiencing. And instinctively, I knew I had to share the adventure and weave in the facts little at a time as I learned them, because that's how I learned it. As we were going on ventures and we'd come across elephant bones, and I'd learn more about poaching and how bushmeat poaching and wood poaching and honey poaching. I've learned about I would learn it in bits and pieces. And I knew I didn't want to bore people with all this stuff about conservation, because a lot of people, quite frankly, aren't interested in it. So it's an adventure, first and foremost, that weaves in conservation as I came upon it myself, kind of in small doses. And so that's just how I presented it, was the way I learned it myself.
It's so beautifully written. And for me, I listened to the audiobook, and maybe it came through a different way. I don't typically listen to audiobooks, and I will have a hard copy now, which I'm really excited to now actually go through it and read the words and sit with it. But hearing it from your voice, it just came through so beautifully. You did such a wonderful job on the audiobook. So I did want to tell you that and commend you on that.
Thank you.
So anyone who is wanting to, listen to the book, absolutely. I know you can get it on Audible, correct? But I have it on, what was the app that
BookFunnel. I think I sent it to you on BookFunnel, but they can get it on any app, or it's free on Carbon TV and as a podcast by chapter. Okay. If they don't, I'm just trying to make it available to as many people as possible who don't maybe have the money to spend.
No, that's wonderful. Okay. So I think really powerful, obviously, is your interaction with the people there. What surprised you most about their relationship with wildlife?
Oh, just I get emotional every time. But just the love they had for the wildlife itself. You know, yeah, they're there for a hunting, sustainable hunting, but their love of wildlife is just oozes through them. And just like at camp, we were right on the border of the Ruaha National Park. You know, all animals on the riverbed, we could just watch them at the water hole because that was the park. They were off limits. And one time, I won't go into it. It's a long story. You'll have to read it in the book. But I thought there was a mouse, and I hate mice. Here I am in Africa, and I'm more worried about mice than I am black mambas. And
Which...
Yes?
You said that you looked up what a black mamba looks like, and then you kind of wish that you hadn't.
Yeah, I wish I hadn't.
But yes.
But yeah, so I was asking them to please kill a mouse. It was in my bathroom. It kept going into the shower with me.
Oh my
gosh.
And
he goes in there, and it was in the dark, in the daylight, it was actually a frog down there this time and not the mouse. And he would not kill that frog. And so anyway, it was the language barrier. And finally I'm like, oh no, I don't want you to kill a frog. But anyway, it was just funny. But they wouldn't even, it was just, and there was a bat that took up residence in the dining hut, like right above my head.
Oh wait, which chapter was it when you all realized, was it the birds or the bats that were defecating on you?
I think our first night there, the bats started. They were
You
nested
thought it was
in,
rain or something?
Yeah, we're like, because we were
Yeah.
on overload and so exhausted that first night. And you're like, and we're sitting there with our drinks underneath this tree, this big canopy tree. And all of a sudden there's drops coming down. And here it's bat droppings. You know, they were nesting in that tree every night. So we had to learn to deal with these bats. But one of those nested in the actual dining hut, like hung upside down right above our dining room table, which to me, they're pretty close to mice, you know, and these were giant ones. But they would not hurt that much. They wouldn't even shoo that bat away. They waited till the day, and then they put something in their plastic so it couldn't rest there anymore. So even they wouldn't even shoo a bat away.
Yes.
You know, so and that was good to me. That just proved to me how much they cared for wildlife, you know.
That's one of the most important messages of this entire episode, or 2 episodes, which we might end up having, is for people to understand that it's not just someone going in trophy hunting. We're going to dig into this pretty deeply. So can you talk about the role that hunting plays in the survival and the empowerment of rural communities, something that Western audiences often don't understand?
Well, trophy hunting, which is what a lot of people call hunting in Africa, just is a vilified word, you know, and a lot of groups, anti-groups, use that word to vilify hunting, vilify hunters and what's happening, and to raise money, quite frankly. But trophy hunters are really no different than a meat hunter here. You know, 90% of people agree with meat hunting, but every bit of meat in Africa gets to use. And I'm talking the bones, I'm talking the innards, the hooves, the tails, a trunk of an elephant, everything
the
is
skin,
eaten.
right?
They use the skin. So nothing is wasted. Now, a trophy hunter, and like they say, what do we care if a so-called trophy hunter takes home a hide and some horns? We don't care about that as long as we get the meat. But even more important than the meat is the value it gives to wildlife. You know, habitat, it's like anything. Habitat has to pay for itself. If you have a farm field here with, if you have 200 acres and you have to pay taxes on that, you have to pay for that somehow. So
or you lose it.
Or you lose it. So you're growing crops, you're doing something. It's the same thing over there. If habitat isn't valuable in its natural form, it gets turned into croplands or pastures or other infrastructure. So by sacrificing a few old animals at the end of their lifespan, it brings in a lot of money and it makes that habitat very valuable. So more than anything, that is what the important thing about hunting. And you got to remember, we love lions and elephants and leopards. They don't necessarily do. I mean, the rural people that are living beside them. I mean, how would you like your child walking to school knowing that there's Simba is out there lurking? I mean, you got to put yourself in their place, you know, and what would it take for you to deal with that lion? If that lion could potentially bring in $50,000 once he was old, and now that $50,000, part of it went to your village and had schools, offered jobs, medicines for your cattle, all these things. If that brought in money and made your life better and made your children's life better and made them have hope for a future, then you might be willing to, you know, you'd take the precautions. You put your cattle in a boma at night. You'd stand guard at night. You'd do these other things that, quite frankly, are time-consuming and expensive. So, you know, people here get upset if they have a deer in their garden. Imagine that's an elephant eating your entire crops in one night, and that's the only thing you have to live on for the year. It's a whole different ballgame. You have to put yourself in their shoes and what would make them want to live with these wildlife. And another thing to say about that is you got to remember, you know, a lot of people, the argument is, well, phototourism. And phototourism is a great thing. It's needed. It's a critical part of the conservation story. However, not all areas are suitable for phototourism. Places we went, photo tourists would never go. They're too remote. They didn't have all the wildlife they want to see. There's no infrastructure. There's no swimming pools. There's tsetse flies that are, you know, terrible.
The tsetse flies.
The tsetse flies. So hunting protects the remote lands that photo tourists do not want to go to. So they're a big part of the puzzle. And then phototourism protects national parks and those pristine areas, or those areas where that are close to airports and easy to get to. It protects those areas.
Yes. And you also referred to this keeping away potential poachers.
Yes. That was one of the main things I learned. I had no clue that they positioned hunting concessions around the national parks purposely. So that's another line of defense against poachers to get into the park. Because poachers, quite frankly, don't want to deal with hunters, professional hunters, and the game scouts. And we were in 540 square miles of the hunting concession. We were crisscrossing that every day, and the other couple we were with were in another vehicle doing the same. And those trackers see everything. They see the tracks. They'd spot them in a heartbeat, and they'd know what time of day they went through there. I mean, so, it's just really dangerous for poachers to operate in a hunting concession. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's a huge deterrent.
And most of the time, a poacher's coming in, they're not harvesting the whole animal.
No, most of the time they aren't because they don't have vehicles and stuff. So sometimes they can if they have a camp and they can dry it, and it depends how organized they are, what the poaching group is. But a lot of times they're just taking the prime parts, put it in their backpack, and getting the heck out of there.
Some things that were going on with you before this trip, and one thing that immediately was almost a sign that it was where you were meant to be, was that you had two guides whose names were both Mike, which is the name of your late brother, Mike. And you referenced that very early on in the book. And I know this is like an emotional conversation to have in this point, but I thought let's get into it and then we can maybe circle back around. It was a little stunning to meet these guides, and they're both named Mike, and it did feel like a sign, a bit of a sign,
especially in Tanzania, where most of the other names were tribal names. And all of a sudden you have a Mike as your tent attendant and a Mike as our driver of our vehicle. So, to me, it was a sure sign.
Emotionally, it affected you. How did it affect you emotionally and the way you experienced the trip?
Well, for some background, my brother Mike died at age 50 of cancer, of small cell lung cancer, and died quickly. And, Rick and I had always been talking about going to Africa, and that was it, just talking, never making plans. And after my brother died, you change how you feel about life, and you realize you don't have all the time in the world. And so we sold a camper, we sold our mules, we sold a rental house. We decided we had to make Africa happen. So that's how we got there. So Mike is the whole reason we were there in Tanzania, and we kind of splurged because Tanzania is a little bit more expensive than some of the other nations. But we thought we were only going once. It was going to be a once-in-a-lifetime experience, so we chose Tanzania. So Mike is the reason we were there. And then to meet have a Mike there taking as your tent attendant who's waking you up every morning and who's, won't even let you carry a backpack around. I mean,
yes, you were talking about that as well. You're like, I don't feel right. This guy's carrying my backpack. I can carry it. But they were so
adamant, and you hurt their feelings if you don't allow them to do that stuff. And anyway, so having two Mikes there meant so much. And I felt like Mike was there shotgun with me. He was there on the trip. And I know Mike would have loved it, So that was really cool to have him riding shotgun, essentially.
Absolutely. There was a reference that you made to, so one of the driver's name was Mike, and then Lillian, and they would sit in the front of this vehicle, and it's not an air conditioned vehicle. No. It's not a, it's like open to the elements. It's fully out there. And again, it was almost like he was a protector.
Yep. I mean, you just kind of feel like he was there, and a part of the whole experience.
Talk about your emotional state a little bit during the trip, but did your grief color the way that you connected to the land, the people, or even the animals there? And how did you process? Did you process some of your grief while you were there because of that coincidence?
Probably without even realizing. I'm a pretty emotional person anyway. I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve. So, and I'm drawn to people in general anyway. I instantly fell in love with the people of Masimba camp. They adopted us into their life like friends.
Yeah.
And they were just so giving and loving and made us feel like one of them. And I think part of it is because I tried to learn Swahili right away. And so that they love that, every day they're teaching me new words, and it was just so fun. We just had such a good rapport. I just love them, and they told the best stories, some of the ones that spoke English, not all of them could speak English. And that's why I tried to learn Swahili, because I wanted to be able to say thank you and hello and have a good evening and all those basic things, But yeah, they're very special.
It's pretty amazing when you meet people who, don't ask for much. They don't really grow up with a lot, right? They work very hard. Like you said, a lot of these guides, this has been their whole life. They've dedicated and worked their way up. They've worked into these positions. How happy and warm and welcoming people can be in this world without needing anything in return, willing to do anything. I mean, simplest thing, I think, like carrying your bag.
Yeah. This is so minor to other people, but I'm always cold, and in Africa, you really should not be cold. But yeah. I mean, it's different though, wherever you go, and the nights can still get chilly. But one night I woke up and our tent, Mike must have been outside the tent and must have heard me say to Rick, "Oh, I was a little chilly last night." First, I was shocked. That's why I even said it to my husband, because we had been hot most of the time. That night, day I come back from our safari, and there was an extra blanket laying on my bed. He had heard me outside of that tent, and I didn't ask for it or nothing, but he had heard me and it was a simple statement. I was chilly last night. I mean, that's just how considerate they are,
Wow. That's a really good lesson in people, just to pay attention to the little things like that end up being big things. They make big impacts. So when we talk about your book and what you want readers to take away from it, especially those who are very anti-hunting, what is your hope that readers are taking away from Cries of the Savanna?
Well, first of all, I want people to go on this grand adventure with me. I want them to fall in love with Africa and fall in love with the African people like I did, and the wildlife, of course. I mean, but I always say you go to wildlife for the wild, or you go to Africa for the wildlife, but it's the people who end up capturing your heart. So I feel like if people fall in love with the adventure and the people, then they will care about what happens to them. And that is critical, because local people have to benefit. For wildlife conservation to work right, local people have to benefit. It's mutual. People thrive. If people thrive, the wildlife will thrive. But if people are hurting, the wildlife is going to be hurting, whether it be poaching or other reasons. So more than anything, I want them to go on a grand adventure and to fall in love with Africa like I did. Have a more open mind, see it through different eyes, and also go to Africa if they have the opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm there. I'm working on it. So you witnessed the immediate benefits of a single hunt. So meat for the village, income for trackers, protection from poachers. Why is that kind of impact so hard for Westerners to grasp or accept? And we've talked about it a little bit, but
we live in a pretty fairy tale, well, I don't want to say fairy tale world. We live in a pretty cushy world compared to them. I mean, like I said, somebody here gets upset if a squirrel gets in their attic or, deer eats their rose bushes. It's a whole different ball game when you're on the ground there. And people just, quite honestly, they just don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Most people that read the book or talk to me with an open mind, a little bit of an open mind, who really wants to understand, they get it. Once you explain these things to them, it's like a light bulb goes off. My gosh, I never thought of it from their perspective. I never thought of it like that, and they still might not like hunting and they don't like the concept, but they at least understand why the sacrifice of a few old males, and that's in Tanzania. Some places, it's a little, every nation has a little bit of different things going on.
Yes.
But essentially that's how it works.
Yes. What would you say to someone who sees a photo of a dead animal and instantly labels the hunter as a villain? And we're going to shift into some bigger conversation around that.
Well, I have that a lot.
I'm sure.
Because I post every day on social media about Africa, whether it be a fun quote, a fun animal fact, or a little bit about sustainable use. So, and I take people on my adventures with me now.
Mm-hmm.
So I just tell them, I try to be really civil because I don't want to stoop to their level. And that's hard sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to explain to them that more than anything, regulated hunting preserves habitat, and habitat loss is the biggest threat to wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to like hunting, you don't have to like hunters, but just try to understand that the sustainable use of wildlife, it's Africa's right, it's the people's right, and it's good for wildlife and it's good for the people. And what right do we Americans have to say about how they, manage their wildlife?
Here.
Yeah. I mean, there's that thing like, how would we like somebody coming here telling us how to manage our white-tailed deer population from Africa?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. And shouldn't those people, I mean, I know people don't like to look at wildlife as a resource, but it's the truth. It really is. And you have to look at it that way. They have all these valuable resources there that right now their hands are being tied a lot of times because of people, the anti-hunting world, and the pushback and all these rules that are being put in. They're not allowed to use the sustainable use resource to better their lives and to better the wildlife and habitat.
Yes. So Lillian, the female game officer, she's a striking figure in your story.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about her, the impact she had on you personally, especially as a woman navigating such a male-dominated world.
Well, it was just, and I'll be honest with you, because I come from America and women pretty much have the same opportunities as men, it never really occurred to me till I was writing the book and somebody said to me, one of my beta readers said, "Oh my gosh, you had a female game scout. Do you know how unusual that is?" And to be honest, I didn't realize it at the time. But I had instantly connected with her because she did speak good English and because she could tell how much I wanted to learn. So like she'd pick up a seed pod and or a piece of fruit and break it open and have Rick and I try it. Or she'd teach me what they did, what kind of teas they made with it, or what kind of medicines they made with it. She knew I was there more from just the wildlife. I mean, I wasn't just there for my husband's hunt. I was there to soak it all in.
Be totally immersed.
Totally immersed in the experience and learn anything I could learn. And she just jumped on that bandwagon and took me along on the adventure and shared all those things with me. And she laughed with me, she just, because she thought I can be pretty goofy and stupid sometimes.
Yes. I mean, hey, I'm right there with you. I feel like we're very similar in that. Yes.
Yeah. So she, and normally they probably would not I fell in that pile of eating guts, which you'll have to read about that whole thing.
Yeah.
And at first they were afraid, I think, didn't want to laugh because, here I am a client, But then I busted out laughing. And so that opened up the whole thing. And then she gave me, that lollipop, called me the Goofball Award. So I got the Goofball Award. So we just built that rapport. And, I learned we'd sit up at night, sometimes talking about how she got to where she was and about her childhood and things like that.
And that was sort of what I was going to say next, like what around her strength in conservation, like her life in that, and womanhood in rural Africa did you learn from her? If there's anything more specific when it comes to, like, how did she get into that position? Was that something she always wanted to do?
She went to the Tanzania Wildlife. I'm going to screw up the name, but she went to a wildlife college there, Tanzania Wildlife, because she grew up in Moshi. She didn't grow up in the bush.
Okay.
So she was kind of just her, I think it was her uncle that was into wildlife conservation and was a game scout or something. So she wanted to be like him, and she went to the school, and then she got hired as a game scout.
Wow.
And da-da-da. And we were her first hunting clients, because game scouts do a lot of things. You know, sometimes they're on anti-poaching patrols. Sometimes they're doing education. Sometimes they're, you know, like any job, there's all kinds of things. So we were her first hunting assignment. So that was kind of pretty special too.
Yeah.
That was the first time she actually had to deal with hunting clients. And anyway, so yeah.
That's cool. I love that. I love that you had her on your trip, and just, I don't know, it's like the stars aligned. It's almost as if everything just totally aligned.
You know, I always say, it might sound corny, but I don't believe in coincidences. You know, I believe my brother, his passing led me there. I believe Lillian was there for a reason. I believe that entire crew that we had were there for a reason. Those particular people at that particular time and that place that I went, just everything came together. Because it was Lillian is why I wrote the book. Because at the end, I promised her that I would try to help other people like me who came hesitant and skeptical. I would try to help other people understand. Now that promise evolved in, I didn't know what I was doing when I made the promise, but it evolved into the book.
You know, when you refer to, a lot of people look at the animals that need to be protected, like the lions and the zebras and the elephants, but there's so many animals, and the whole point of this is to protect them, right? But that it's almost as if the misunderstanding of people. So when you were writing this book, obviously you're writing with courage, and you've talked about this with me. You're walking a fine line, like trying to honor your experience, the people that you met, the complexity of hunting. So did you ever fear backlash or misunderstanding, which you have had an abundance of, I believe, since?
Yeah, I mean, it's...
And how do you approach it?
I get a lot of hate. In the beginning, I used to try, you know, on social media and stuff like that. I've had death threats. But I try to... I just... First of all, I tell myself... Most of them aren't willing to go to rural Idaho to back up these threats. So I tell myself that. And but also, I just think it has to be told, and somebody's got to do it. And I have a voice that's a little bit unique, so I think I need to use it. And I've been, you know, I have a good storyteller voice, I guess. At least I'm told that for the book. And it engages people. So anyway, on social media, in the beginning, I used to try to engage with every one of those hateful things. Sometimes now, if it's too hateful, I don't, because it saps my energy.
Yes.
It just brings me down, and so I concentrate on the people I think I can make a difference. You know, if they have some little inkling of what they said, you know, if you really want to love wildlife, then maybe you should da-da-da-da. Or I'll say, well, what would you do? That's a lot of my thing now. Okay, so what is your answer to protect habitat? If you don't want hunters there and phototourism doesn't work, what's your solution? Because we're willing to listen. You know, all the biologists and wildlife experts are willing to listen. They would love someone to come up with some grand plan to protect wildlife.
Yes.
You know,
it's not as if people go into these situations I don't even know if callously is the word that I'm looking for, but it's all very thought out. It's all very planned. Like when you are about to take the life of an animal who has lived, you know, Cecil the lion, that you said that's coming up on a 10-year anniversary.
10-year anniversary, yeah.
And that happened 3 months before you went on this trip. Now, I am one of those people who I saw the headline, I saw the photo, I was immediately disgusted. I can't believe this happened. Shame on him. How is this happening? I just jumped on the bandwagon, right? I did. And up until I have been introduced to you and had a conversation with you, have I been like, huh, I didn't know anything about anything. And even online, there's misinformation, which we should all know by now. So
Misinformation has a much easier way of getting around than the real thing. That clickbait, that stuff, because our explaining sustainable use, especially if an animal like a lion or an elephant or a leopard, it's a long conversation. It's complex. You have to understand the whole deal. It's a lot easier to put a picture of a cute lion or a cute elephant and call hunters evil. And I'm not saying all hunters are good. I mean, it's like anything. You have bad doctors, you have irreputable lawyers or teachers, whoever. So not all hunters are the same, but the vast majority are ethical hunters who love to hunt and they care about wildlife.
And, that controversy is deeply tied, the emotional reactions people have to trophy hunting versus the reality of the ground in Africa.
Exactly. That Cecil, that's how you pronounce it, or that's how they say. I always say Cecil, but they say Cecil. Cecil
okay.
The lion was a very old lion. He was collared, so Panthera knew all about him. They collared him. They're one of the first ones. Amy Dickman, who's head of Panthera, she's the first one to say, even though she's a non-hunting vegetarian, she's the first one to say eliminating regulated hunting is disastrous to lion conservation because now the habitat is destroyed. So that was her lion. I mean, that was their lion. But what happened is it went off because it's what lions do. They stray, and it goes off, and it was getting old past that time. It went on to a hunting concession that because that hunting concession is there are a lot of lions. If that hunting concession wasn't there, like Amy said, there would not be the amount of lions in that area.
Like there would have been more gone.
Yeah, there would have been more gone. So he did shoot it with an arrow, I believe, and then it
was like the next day.
Yeah, and he had to follow it up. But if he hadn't followed that up, that lion could have killed somebody. It could have caused a lot of damage. I mean, granted, it's a shame he didn't kill it the first time. Every hunter wants to kill instantly. They don't want to wound, and they will do anything they can when they wound an animal. And that's what happened there. He followed up, went. It was a perfectly legal hunt, perfectly legal lion, the perfect one to hunt, really, because it was so old. And it raised a lot of money for the anti-hunting groups, but did nothing for lion conservation. I'm going to quote here what Ivan Carter said. Ivan Carter is a well-known conservationist and does a lot of good. And what happens when the whole Cecil thing happened was they put those lion import bans in place. So in Tanzania, which is very remote and really hard to hunting concessions, a lot of times they smell the smaller animals, but it's the lion that maybe brings in the big ticket, the 1 or 2 lions they get for their concession. So when that was stopped, a lot of outfitters couldn't stay in business. They gave up their hunting concessions. So that left all this land vacant to poachers, crops, pastures, infrastructure. So here's what Ivan Carter says. The uncomfortable truth is that bans on lion hunting has killed or is in the process of killing 15 million acres of lion habitat, and with it, all the lions as well.
Wow.
So
it's the fact that people aren't willing to hear the statistics. And my next question is, why do you think Cecil's death caused such a firestorm globally, but the everyday poaching or starvation of animals doesn't get the same outrage?
And that's what these wildlife experts. I'm on a WhatsApp group with one of them. I can't contribute much because I'm not a wildlife expert, but I can listen in. I learn from them. That's what's so frustrating to them. You don't see the picture that they see of a lion and all her cubs being poisoned or speared to death because there's no hunting there. The people don't want to live with lions. You don't see a carcass poisoned and kills all these vultures. There was just a reason. Yes, and there was just a recent, I think, 200 vultures were just killed in South Africa recently because they poisoned an elephant carcass.
And they're like beautiful. They really are beautiful birds.
And they're endangered species now because of that. But why poachers kill them is because they're like a neon sign saying, hey, there's a dead animal. Here I am. So that draws game rangers. That's bad news for them.
Yes.
And a little part of it is traditional medicines, some of them is. But it's more about just killing the threat. But yeah, Amy and all those other wildlife, they see the dead animals. They see what happens when they don't have value. And far more animals die when there's not a hunting concession there than when there is. I mean, hunting, it's a whole thing. It's sustainable and it's well managed. When you kill any wildlife, babies, young, old, in traps, you're just indiscriminate. It's unsustainable. So it just doesn't work, you know. But they raised a lot of money. Those anti-groups raised a ton of money on that thing. And that, unfortunately,
where did that money go?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because did they buy habitat?
Is it going to those lands? Because ultimately, you would think, isn't that the point of that? Wouldn't that be the point?
You know, I
don't know the answer. And I know that you're like, it's a good question because nobody knows.
There are some NGOs, which NGOs are nonprofit organizations. There are some that do really good work.
Yes.
But there are some of those really, really hardcore anti-hunting ones. We don't know where the money goes. I'm assuming it, you know, they pay themselves high salaries, but they're not buying habitat. They're not doing anti-poaching. They're, you know, I'm just going to use this for an example. But Kasunga National Park in Zambia and Malawi, this International Fund for Animal Welfare raised tons of money to translocate these elephants to this park. So I can't remember the millions, but millions upon millions. So they took 263 elephants out of this area to move them to this Kasunga, to an area near villages, without putting a fence up, to villages that never experienced elephants before. So within 24 hours, 48 hours, 2 people were dead from the elephants. Did they stop the translocation and relook at things and think we need? No, they continued with it. Since then, I think 10 more people have died, millions of dollars in damage. These people had pretty good banana crops, and they were doing pretty good for native villagers. Well, their crops are destroyed, their homes are destroyed because they store their corn in their homes, you know, they build these things, and so the elephants destroy them to get to the corn because there wasn't enough food in this park.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you can't really blame the animals.
No.
They're being moved.
They're being moved.
They have to survive. They have to eat, and they're like, here is a resource.
And they're being moved into an area that they didn't know. They don't know the terrain. The vegetation's different. There's already animals there that are maybe pushing them out. There's no fences to keep them in. So they're doing what they have to do. But what people have to understand is when people hurt, elephants hurt. Because even though I think 10 or 11 people have died now from elephants, far more elephants have been killed because retaliatory type things.
Absolutely.
You just destroyed my whole crops that I have to live on for the year. My livelihood. So, and the elephants are stressed, but that organization has done nothing to compensate these people or try to help them at all. In fact, it's the first lawsuit there's a lawsuit started in the UK against this organization because it's the first one of its kind. But they raised millions upon millions upon millions for this, but they won't even build a fence to help these people out.
So how do you help people understand that's something that can be both emotionally uncomfortable and ecologically necessary, like regulated hunting? How do you help people understand that? You've already taken huge steps in not only going on this trip, making that a priority, but sharing your experience. And that's huge because there's a lot of people, again, I said this earlier when we were talking before we started recording, it's black and white, right and wrong. I don't think there's anyone out there, and this goes back to your point of the quote that you made that I talked to you about. We talked, I think, before we started recording about the hunting quote that you said early on in the episode. You're not hunting to kill.
Most hunters don't hunt to kill. They hunt to have hunted. And I know it's hard for people that aren't hunters to understand that, but, hunters have that drive in them to pursue game, to challenge, to push themselves to the limits. You know, it's inbred in us. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for hunters.
Well, survival. I mean, it's how we survive.
So for us to all of a sudden, in just a few generations, all of a sudden call these people evil that used to be, even just 20, 30 years ago, used to be looked at like, you know, oh, they brought home the meat. Now they're looked at as these evil people. So in just a few generations, it has totally switched because life has gotten a little too cushy for so many. People that are distant from farms and ranches and rural life don't quite get where their food comes from. And it's kind of amazing when I did that study, you know, that some people, I know this is comical, but some people, even adults, thought that brown cows had brown milk. I mean, you know, some people had no idea where cheese come from. So it's just crazy.
It is. It is. And with the factory farming that we have in this country and the way that those animals are treated, you know, there was an experience that you talked about, and I don't remember which one it was, but how you had tears streaming down your face after the animal was down, and how you and your husband both had an emotional reaction to this experience, and the respect you had for that animal and the time you took to just say something.
And I think most hunters do that.
Yes, I mean, I do too.
And maybe not. So it's like any group, hunters evolve as well. So as a young hunter, they've been more interested in just the hunt, you know, but as they get older and learn and experience, they become more emotionally attached to the wildlife and to the animals. So most of them say a thanks and appreciate the animal. We always did that. Every animal. You said thanks and gave it respect and honored it. And the native ones did it in a little different ways. So, you know, some were Muslim, some were different. You know, we had 7 different tribes represented there. So everybody did it in a little different way. But that you always respect the animal. And yeah, it often brings tears. Not every time, every situation's different. And sometimes it surprises you which ones hit you hard and which ones don't hit you as hard. But yeah, I shed a lot of tears when I'm over there, but I always also know it's for the greater good.
Yeah. No, even like talking to you about it makes me emotional because it's how many people go to the grocery store and buy their chicken and buy their meat.
And that's one of the things you say, why don't you just go to the store and buy your meat? That's one of the ones that gets you. Where do you think that meat?
Where did you think it came from? And how do you think at least you know how these animals were, and I don't even know if saying killed feels right. It doesn't feel like hunted. Like, what's the word that you would?
Well, you know, to be politically, sometimes they say harvested now, but a lot of hunters don't like that. They think it's sugarcoating it, but whatever. You know, the animal does die. So whatever, I try to say harvested just because it is a little more gentler. But anyway, yeah, an animal dies so that we can live. And at least wild game, they're living a wildlife in habitat. And by harvesting that animal, you've saved this whole habitat, not just for that deer or that elephant or that lion, but you've saved the habitat for every creature in that habitat. From the birds to the bees to the, you know, to the creepy crawlers, everything. So, and it's all a part of it. Biodiversity is so important.
Absolutely. Okay, so there's a chapter. Hold on. I got to look at my notes here. Well, we have the angry little devils, the tsetse flies.
The angry little devils.
And I love that that's what they were referred to.
That's what Lillian called them.
And I think was it the first day where you realized that all of your defense against the tsetse flies was in a bag that you didn't have. Exactly. And you're like, well, here we go. And how brutal they are. There was even someone that you referred to who he came out of his tent the next day that was with you on a trip, and you thought his wife had maybe like smacked him in the face. Yeah. Because his face was so swollen from so many tsetse
he was
flies.
allergic. He was allergic to them, I guess, or had an allergic reaction. Yes. But yeah, that was within 15 minutes of getting off the plane. So we're thinking we're going to see zebras and elephants and lions. We're so excited. But what are we hit with? We're hit with tsetse flies. And all of our stuff we had brought to come, because we knew it was a tsetse fly area. So we had brought all that stuff, but it was still packed in our bags. You know, we hadn't even got to camp yet.
Oh, no.
So yeah, it was like a battalion of the little blood-sucking devils. But
I can only imagine. We were outside of, I'm trying to think where we were. I was in South America, and I can't remember where I was. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Same thing. We didn't have any of our mosquito, and they were brutal there. And I just remember getting there from all of our traveling. We took a nap and woke up just covered in mosquito bite, like everywhere, ankles. I remember they were on my arms. I had them in weird places, like on my body. And it was totally brutal. So that was my only, whenever you started talking about the tsetse flies, which is TSE, that's how you spell them.
Yeah.
That's how you spell it. But I thought I had a flashback to that trip. And yeah, it was pretty brutal. But there was a night where your husband said, it was chapter 11. He said, honey, put your shoes on. And that was the hippo scare.
Yeah.
So you were prepared to run. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what that was like?
I mean, this just shows you
it was a mama with a baby, right?
Yeah. This just goes to show you how stupid you can be, you know? Like we're
going to run.
Yeah, we're in a tent, and hippos can run, 20, 30 miles an hour? I can't remember right now, but they can run fast. And you never want to get between a hippo and the water or with a hippo and a baby. And so Rick wakes me up because, he never wants to be late for breakfast because Lord forbid we would be 5 minutes late to get on that safari vehicle, Mm-hmm. So it was time to get up, and he woke up and looked out, and there's a mama hippo right outside his little screen window. I mean, literally, it was like a foot away. So he
probably could have touched it.
Yeah, he could have touched it. So he sneaks over to me because we're in single beds. He sneaks over to me and whispers in my ear, honey, wake up. You have to put your shoes on. We might have to run. And, so that's how I'm woken up in Africa. In Clarana, we're hearing hyenas every night. We're hearing lions every night. And this is how my husband wakes me up in the morning. And me, like an idiot, because I'm in my morning days, I get up and listen to him.
Yes.
I put on my tennis shoes, and he said, okay, I'm going to flip on the light now. And so, because they had solar power for in the dark. And so he flipped on the light, and the hippos just ran off towards the water. So it was non-eventful, but it was just, what if they had?
What if? What if?
We weren't going to outrun them. I mean, it was
That's funny they thought you were going to run, though.
It was just so funny. He's like, I'm going to turn on the light now because we got to get to breakfast. But anyway, we weren't late for breakfast.
And you talked a lot about what were the monkeys? The vervet
monkeys.
Vervet monkeys, and you saw those all the time, right? And they were, monkeys are curious, aren't they?
Yeah, they're curious.
They're super curious. If you had to pick your favorite experience seeing an animal for the first time, which one would you say? And I don't know, it could even be hearing it and then seeing it. Oh, now Simba was along because you were hearing him every night, but it wasn't until like almost the very end that you actually saw him.
Yeah.
And that had to be a really powerful moment. But if there was, let's say, other than Simba,
I would say giraffes. I mean, because giraffes, when you might see them in a zoo or something, they're just standing still. And yes, they look beautiful. But if you see and you got to remember, in a hunting concession, animals don't stand around for you to take pictures. I mean, it's totally different than a national park. They get used to vehicles there. But in a hunting concession, they hear you and they're off. So, when you see a giraffe there, they're usually running, and they're so graceful, and it looks like they're in slow motion. So it's just mesmerizing. I always loved
like
it
the
when
galloping.
Yes, and their legs are so long, so it looks like they're hardly moving, but they're covering tons of territory. And then the warthogs are the coolest little buggers.
Yes, you were saying that the warthogs were funny.
Yeah,
and
they're fun.
Almost just like little characters.
Yeah, their little tails go in the air. When they're scared, their tails go in the air. It's a signal to, the danger.
Oh,
so their little tails go straight in the air. So you kind of feel bad that they're all scared when they see you. But yeah, it's fun seeing all those little babies running around with tails in their ears, following mama. But yeah, it's just so many.
The
they're all
cherry
unique.
on top,
And then that
giraffes.
vervet monkey was fun too because they're in the tree above our head and they're kind of playing hide and seek with us. We kind of go here and they'd look there, and then we go here and they'd look. So
that's funny.
Yeah, it was really
funny. So talk to me a little bit about they're the dik-diks, right? The tiny antelopes.
They're dik-diks, oribis, cliff springers. There's a lot of little teeny.
Like 16 inches tall,
small,
you said, some of
little,
them with incredible speed as well, like 26 miles per hour, which you don't think, but they're
little bolts of lightning, and you just get a glimpse of them very rarely. I never got a picture of one in my not even the butt. A lot of animals, I have pictures of butts disappearing in the bush because it's, like I said, it's not as, that's another misconception. People think they're going to go on safari and hunting is just like a shooting gallery. You're just going to go and animals are standing there. It's nothing like that. First of all, you can't even shoot from a vehicle. You have to be on the ground. And no hunter, you want that stalk, you want that hunt. But in a hunting concession, they run. So you have to stalk them and track them and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. The little guys. Well,
so Rick did get one, an Oribi, but it was just luck. An old male was sitting on a thing, and the tracker spotted it from a distance, and we were able to sneak up, and Rick was able to get a shot. And granted, it's hard to accept because he's so tiny, so that's where your heart kind of. But what helped me that day is we laid down. Finally they laid us down for some shit. We took a nap. The first couple of days we didn't do that, and but they cooked it and ate it right then and there. Our crew took it, and I'm like, what do they do? Usually they cooked mealy meal, like that kind of like thick grits. That's what they eat with pretty much every meal. And but yeah, I go over and they're roasting the Oribi right there at lunch. So it helps you seeing it that quickly go from sustainable to to being used helps you understand that. Yeah.
And there was a different type of antelope, like the larger ones, was it with the coiled, the kudu. And the first time that you approached one, I'm forgetting all the people's names. Raphael was the one that said it's not mature enough.
Yeah.
So I think that's a conversation that I'd like to dig into a little bit more too, is people really understanding that you're not hunting juveniles. You're not just hunting whatever's in front of you. It's not like you see it and you hunt it. It has to be approved, and they know it's not old enough, or we need to make sure it's at a certain age.
You want it to be. They want it, and it's only for their own good too, the outfitters, because that's the whole key: sustainable use of wildlife. For sustainable, they have to, keep the younger generations going. So they don't want to kill anything until it's an older male.
Yeah.
And but anyway, we had seen a beautiful kudu from a distance. We tracked, or I shouldn't say tracked. We stalked to get close to it. And got close enough. Rick was on the sticks. They have the tripod thing they use over there. And Raphael got another look at it through the binoculars, and he just said to Rick, Rick was on the rifle and everything, hand on the trigger. And Raphael said, no, he's not big enough. He needs to be a little older.
And to you guys, he was huge.
Yes, to us, if you're used to seeing elk or used to seeing white-tailed deer or mule deer, he looked huge. He was 48 inches. That's what Raphael's. And that's another thing. These guys are so amazing. He says he's 48 inches. He needs to be about 52 inches, and then he'd be about 12 years old. So, and don't quote me. I might, and every nation's a little different because animals grow a little different things. But yeah, he said he wasn't quite old enough. He could tell by the curls, the way the curls went.
Yes.
And they look at other parts of the body too. Sometimes they have tufts on there's just different aspects that professional hunters look for. And that's one reason, as an American, you go over there, you have to go with a professional hunter. What looks big to us, we don't know African wildlife. So that it's their job, first of all, to keep us safe. That's their number one priority, is to keep us safe. And then the second is to make sure the animals we're hunting are legal and old, so harvestable males.
Yes.
But and that's another thing people always ask me if I was scared, and that's, you put your faith in them and you learn, quickly. I'm a pretty trusting person anyway, but they quickly won my trust. I had total faith in them. I know shit can still happen, excuse the language. You're in Africa. But essentially, I just got over my fears by knowing that they had my back and that they were all, and I was always fourth in line too. So there was always PH, Rick, Magogo, then me, then Lillian, and the assistant tracker. Okay. So I was always fourth in line, so I figured by then the snakes are gone.
Yeah. You're like, I'm good.
Surely they've scared
to see that. Did you see a black mamba though? Did you say?
We didn't. Rod and Sue had seen them, but we smelled one time, or Raphael said he smelled one.
Oh, that's right, because they have like
I smell like rice or something, he said.
Oh, interesting. How big?
But we did see one on our last trip to Zimbabwe. Oh. We were going down the road. It was across the road, and It was the whole way across the road. So it must have been 12, 13 foot long.
Oh,
you know, about thick as an arm.
Yeah.
And my husband was in the front and I was in the back, and he looked at that and he yelled out, "You're each man for themselves," and he rolled up his window.
Mm-hmm. Well, even with anti-venom in your hand,
Yeah,
it's not enough. If they bite you, that's it.
Yeah.
You're like,
if you happen to have the anti-venom, but what's the chance of that in rural Africa when it has to be refrigerated? I mean,
have it.
Yeah, the chance of having that and getting there anywhere within 20 minutes is pretty slim.
Oh, that's wild.
But luckily they are elusive. You know, they're fast, but you just don't want to corner them. They usually, this is what they tell me.
This is what they tell you.
This is what they tell us.
They won't unless
they're not an aggressive snake. Is they'd rather get out of your way unless you corner them. So like they always say, do not be reaching in a hole in the termite mound or some stupid thing like that. Or be careful when you're climbing a tree. You just don't want to corner them.
Yes. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I would imagine for a lot of snakes, although there are snakes that are very that will come for you. So if you could go back and tell anything to your pre-Tanzania self, what would it be?
I don't know. I think I went there with an open mind, and I can't think of what I would do differently because I think everything evolved the way it should have. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think I learned as I went, which seemed very real. You know, and I am a person. Well, I like to think I'm a person with good common sense. So to me, it all made common sense.
You seem to be, yes.
You know,
yeah.
So to me, even though I'm emotional, I'm also very pragmatic. So when I was there and I could see what they're dealing with, you know, let's use this for an example. We were going back to camp and we come across 3 Tanzanians walking, which was on our land. Right away, the rifles started coming out because we thought they might be poachers, but they stopped. And here there was a concession, I don't know how many miles away, across a riverbed or something. And we stopped to talk to them because they didn't have rifles or anything. They weren't poachers. They were coming to our camp for medicine. And it was in the heat of the day. And I said to Raphael later, I said, why would they walk in the heat of the day when it was 105 degrees? Why wouldn't they have come in the morning or evening? And without even skipping a beat, he said, well, because it's the safest kind of day because the lions will be napping.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Butler County 4-H and FFA Junior Livestock Auction, happening at the Butler Farm Show on Thursday, August 7th, starting at 5:30 p.m. Thank you for tuning in to Alter Eagle. Join me every Monday for a new episode, and be sure to click subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Follow us on Instagram at Alter Eagle Podcast. Until next time, stay safe, stay hopeful, stay kind.